G'day guys, bloody excited to be here for the potty today because I had the chance to chat to the legend that is James Graham. Now doing some great things in the media with his podcast, The Buy Around. Most of you will know Jimmy though from his time in professional rugby league. Over 400 caps, which is just bloody unbelievable and nearly unheard of. Jimmy, played in the Super League, played in the NRL. Most of you here in Australia who listen to or watch the show will know Jimmy from his time at the Canterbury Bankstown Bulldogs and the St. George Illawarra Dragons. It's just one of those players that you bloody love to hate. You love him if he's on the team that you support. You hate him if he's a part of the opposition because he just played with such an intensity and ferocity that made him such an effective player for such a long time. But we shared a brilliant conversation today, a very vulnerable and honest conversation in which we discussed the topics of what it takes to really make it in your sport and recognising your weaknesses and then deciding what your strengths are going to be and what you're going to spend your time working on. And I just think that's an incredibly valid point for anyone in any professional pursuit in which they partake in life. And I just love that we got onto some really honest topics about the transition from being a professional athlete for so long into life thereafter and what that entails and what the challenges of that are. And there's certainly been a few challenges for Jimmy as he recalls some really challenging times with his mental health, and was quite honest and open about that. So this felt like from top to bottom a really honest, fun and exciting conversation in which I'm sure many of you will love. And a little shout out to you if you can get around this and you enjoy it. Just share it with a mate, share it around, because that's how the show grows. Thank you so much. Enjoy the episode with Jimmy Graham. G'day, mate. Good to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Brad. Excited to come on the show. I'm going to be upfront and honest, don't know too much about it. Obviously, we've got a couple of mutual friends in common, so excited to be here and talk about a couple of things that, it should be good fun.
Mate, I'm really looking forward to this. It's funny because I think, the interesting thing for me with this world is a podcast kind of gives you a ticket to speak to people you maybe wouldn't normally come across. But I remember around town when you were playing for Saints, I'd see you down at a coffee shop, running in and out. And usually you always looked like you were in a rush, always trying to get somewhere, which I know you're a family man, so that doesn't surprise me. But I did have a coffee with Laurie and Lomax this morning, and I said, is there anything I should ask him? And they said, ask him about the hot water bottle.
Yes. My hot water bottle, very seldom left home without it. So throughout my professional career as an athlete, I had back issues, bad back issues, almost as far back as being maybe 13, 14. I had issues with my back, and tried numerous approaches. I was constantly seeing physios, osteopaths, all that sort of stuff. Great osteopath over in, actually I'm not going to mention her name because it's really hard to get an appointment, but there's an osteopath who I do see, and I've told a few friends about her, and now I struggle to get an appointment, so I'm not going to go public with who that is because
things need to be gatekept.
I want to keep my appointments. She'll get inundated with maybe she would, maybe she wouldn't, but anyway, I've always been managing back and groin issues, had double groin reconstruction, surgery, had a hip resurfacing at the end of my career. But anyway, a lot of back groin issues. And one of the best remedies I found was a good old-fashioned hot water bottle. So, you turn up to a new club, so when I turned up to the Bulldogs, you get ridiculed.
For sure.
And people are like, oh, you got the hot water bottle, you need this fancy gizmo, whatever it may be. I'm like, nah, this'll do for me. And
if it ain't broke.
And it works. And you can always use it. You don't need a microwave to heat it up. You just basically need a kettle.
Just a kettle.
And that'll be it. So always before the game, that was my best way of preparing for the game. And obviously coming from, I signed for the Dragons, still living in Sydney and a lot of travel involved, a lot of car journeys. I was like, oh, just take my hot water bottle with me. And
love it.
yeah, people often ridiculed it. And then the more inquisitive players, they were like, oh, maybe I'll give that a try. And there was a couple that took it up. And also, I've sort of learned that it's not that I don't care what people think, because I do. Because I think you'd have to be like a bit narcissistic not to. But if something works for me, or if I think it's right, I want to stand by it no matter what. So, like, there's sometimes there's social anxiety going into a new group. I've got this thing that I know is a little bit different with a hot water bottle, and I'd wear it, or I'd have it, not wear it, but yeah, I'd use it. I'd be like,
you're going to live and die by the sword.
Well, I just don't care if you think that it's funny. I know it works for me. Another example is wearing seatbelts. Right, so
I wasn't sure this was a hotly debated topic, but indulge me.
No. So we'd get onto, say, like the team bus. People don't wear seatbelts.
Yeah, okay.
But I did. I remember someone taking a picture, like taking the piss. I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
You know, when the bus crashes,
yeah,
I'll still be playing. Like but it's funny how like we conform and like how So I read this really interesting book called Situations Matter, and it does. So you think, oh yeah, I always wear a seatbelt. Always, like, yeah, it's just part of you get in the car, you put it on, but you go on a coach or a bus and you don't.
You don't. Yeah, it's interesting. It's almost it's like baby talk in a relationship. How many people baby talk at home don't baby talk in front of their mates? Situations matter.
Situations do matter, and it makes a massive difference in how you react or behave, or your course of action. How you think you would do something usually isn't.
Who wrote that?
You know what? I can't recall the author, but it's a really fascinating book and goes into a number of details of certain situations that have happened and how people do behave, and even talks about, if you're fortunate enough to pick where you may have like a heart attack or something, fall on ill health, don't do it in Times Square. You'd be better doing it on the local street, because responsibility, you'd think, if I saw someone have a heart attack, no matter where, I'd rush to their aid and their help. But the more people there are, the responsibility becomes shared. So if you don't act, it's well, everyone else hasn't acted. And if you were just walking down one of these quiet streets in Wollongong and you see someone needing medical assistance, you'd automatically go and help them, because it's just a one-on-one situation. But you think, oh, I'm always that person, but you're not. And there's often variables at play, or parts of the situations that affect how you behave and act.
I heard something along the lines of this the other day. It was called something like good person's bias, where if you see someone in that exact situation having a medical emergency, the good human in you goes, someone will help, so I don't need to be that person.
Well, I think it depends on how many people are around.
For sure. And that's the thing, the more people that are around, the more you assume that the right thing to do is to help. Or so sometimes no one helps.
Or you've got somewhere to be.
And you've always got somewhere to be, James Graham, because you're always in a...
I like to... It's not that. I just like to be... I hate being late.
Yeah.
And I want to be efficient with time. So... Yeah.
I get that.
I get that. That's what it is. And
that's a footballer thing, I reckon, because I can be 10 minutes early, but later than the boys to coffee, and they're like, oh, about time. I'm 10 minutes early. Yeah, but we've been here for 10 minutes.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's an interesting one, I guess. And again, situations matter. So there's certain situations that, like, you're late, like, meh, whatever, doesn't matter. But there are situations just like, you can't excuse being late. And yeah, I have even now, so being a professional NRL player or rugby league player, like time efficiency is important because your days are mapped out. Like now I'm, you know, I have a number of different roles and different activities throughout the day. Like I want to be efficient with that time. And I don't like dead time either.
Yeah.
Like it's something I'm actually working on, being okay with having dead time.
Yeah.
And I like to be busy. Like I don't like to be sitting around. I like having things to do.
I get the sense of that. And I have to say, like, we got onto this because of the hot water bottle. And there's probably some secret sauce in the hot water bottle, obviously, because the thing that blew my mind is I listened to your chat with Piercy, which was a great chat, by the way. We'll make sure that all the details of your podcast are in the show notes so people can get onto it. But, mate, I was dumbfounded by the fact that you played 400 professional games. Like, I think for me, that's in its own right outrageous, but even more outrageous considering the way that you played the game with absolute no regard for your body, but also the fact of, like, your position. Like, positionally, and I could be wrong here because I don't know the history or the stats of rugby league as an expert, but I would say that I would think it's more rare for front row forwards or people who play the game in a more physical manner to last as long as you did.
Yeah, look, I think playing 400 games is probably, there's a couple of reasons why it got to so many. One was a byproduct of, I started in the Super League where the seasons are a lot longer than over here in the NRL. I started very young. I was playing week in, week out by the age of 19. So I started early, went and finished playing till 35, I think I was, when I hung up the boot. So it's obviously a lot of time out there. I was relatively fortunate on an injury front. Like I didn't miss too much with injuries, had a couple of suspensions, but I guess in terms of like playing the game, my style was more of a longevity style. Like I wasn't that, you know, I was, you know, a front row that liked to play long minutes, but you know, there's a certain style that comes with that. And
how would you explain that style though? Because I would almost think differently. I remember watching you, and the way that I'd sum you up as a player. So I'm a Chook supporter, have been my whole life, and I would say that you're probably similar to that of a Jared Warrior-Hargraves in the fact that if you play, and I don't mean playing style, but I mean if you play like whoever supports either Canterbury or Saints when you were playing for them would love you because of the way you play the game. Whoever is watching you as the away side would hate you because they know that you're trouble on the field, you stir things up.
Yeah, I think, look, I played with a lot of passion, a lot of emotion. I cared so much about the game, about my club, about the result, and the impact of trying to play well. I played with an intensity, but I'd also like to think that I played with deception and a bit of skill as well, which you know, I was so I thought a lot about the game and areas that I could gain an advantage because I was slow. Like if you looked at the GPS data, you'd see I was like one of the slowest in the teams. And if you came to one of our gym sessions, you'd see that like my bench press would be down the bottom of the full squad list. My squat would be down the bottom of the full squad list. But
yeah, the boys were saying the squats weren't that deep.
No, but you know what? Like I didn't neglect those areas.
Yeah.
Like I worked really hard in those areas, and I knew that they were important. But I found, so I had to find other ways to be competitive on the field and get an advantage over my opponent. So like if we go into like a power battle, like of just pure force that you like someone can generate like on a bench press, and like I'm nowhere near, like I'm down playing like not even local park footy, like in terms of strength testing. Like I had a dig, but I used up, so my conditioning had to be like better than anyone. So I could probably, where I tried to play the game in terms of being like a power athlete, that was never going to be me. What I'd look to try and do is be able to work at around like 80% for longer than anyone, because that probably is the game. Like there are those moments of like explosiveness, but the game is, I viewed the game as, okay, well, I'm never going to be able to, I didn't have the genetics to be able to compete with those power athletes. And they could gain a competitive advantage over me by being more powerful than me. But I'd be like, oh no, well, I'm going to try and drag people into deeper waters and maintain my 80% for longer than anybody else. So that's where I sort of looked at getting it, and my 80% was better than most others, 80% of like their full workload. But I also had the ability to, I think, maintain it for longer than most. And then also like observing the game, and I picked this up from quite a young age, was, well, like you use the art of deception. Like I think it's something that is not practiced enough in our game, is like, especially in the forwards, maybe in the outside backs it is, but I think a lot of the game is about, like, if you think of being a defender, I could make, if someone's just running straight all day, and tackle that person pretty much all day, like the variables don't change. But as soon as someone has the ability to move off both feet, well, then I've got to think. And then when you couple that in with fatigue, if I'm under fatigue and I don't know what you're going to do, if you're going to move to my left or to my right, that's going to make that decision, or the ability to execute the tackle, the degree of difficulty is going to improve. Now, then you throw, okay, well, if you bring somebody with you as a support player, just one player, okay, now I've got more decisions, more things happening. What's he going to do with the ball? Is he going to run? Is he going to step off his left, off his right? Is he going to pass to that one player? But then you put another player at the back of you. It's like, okay, well, now I've got a lot more going on in my head. And then you put a player in you inside. It's like
stacking the odds, aren't you?
You are. So, but also you increasing the difficulty on the opposition. But then when you keep doing that and you add fatigue, because I think, the fatigue factor in our game is really important. I think it's something that sets it apart from a lot of other collision sports. Like, I think it's one of the main differences between rugby league and rugby union is the fatigue factor. Now, like, that's just me observing rugby union. It's certainly, I think, what sets it apart from
the NFL.
The NFL, like, that's very stop-start. That's like, I'd be useless in the NFL because that's a power sport. But
do you think that's, sorry to interject there, but do you think that's the main reason why? And obviously, there's a huge number of factors here, but the main reason why I can see there will always be a huge challenge for even the best in our game to convert to the NFL is most of their training and most of their time spent is in these very short frames of explosive speed, power, quick decision making that, if you have all that in the NRL, you can perform. But I'd like to see a bunch of their athletes try to play 80 minutes in the backs or play 40 minutes in the forwards and see how they fare. I think they'd find it very difficult.
It's a completely different, and sports scientists would be able to tell you this, it's a completely different energy system that you need to tap into. It's a completely different training mechanism. It's a completely different upbringing in terms of familiarity with the sport. Now, some athletes have that ability to shift sports, but it's incredibly difficult to do, and especially doing it once I think it can be can be almost quite disrespectful sometimes when an athlete changes sports. So there are a few examples that have worked really well with transitions. So from footballers to boxing, but a lot of the time these lads that transition from NRL to boxing, they've been doing boxing for a long time, and they go into deep training and forget the NRL. They put that to the side. Now there are a few that do it sort of sporadically and whatnot, but I think that the sports that we play, like, it takes so much effort just to get onto the field or the pitch or whatever you call your arena. It takes so much, and there's so much nuance difference, and there's so much little detail that it takes to get out there. So a good example of that actually is there was a professional sprinter called Dwayne Chambers. Don't know if you recall him.
Heard of the
British
name, yeah.
sprinter. He'd be in and around the sort of the 10-second mark. He got found guilty of a doping violation. Was suspended by World Athletics, and he wasn't allowed to play any professional sport for 2 years. Anyway, I think part of his comeback trail, he had a trial with Castleford Tigers, which are a Super League team over in England, and there was a lot of publicity around it. It's like, oh, we've got this sprinter, this person that could outsprint anybody on this field, but let's see how he's going to go at rugby league. And I think the consensus was we could be onto something here. And I spoke to one of the lads there. He was like, "Mate, he is rapid. He is so quick. But his repeat effort, it just doesn't exist."
Yeah.
So all his training that he'd done his whole life was 10 seconds, and then not just 10 seconds, and then so we do some training that it's a 10-second effort. You wait, you go again, in that interval training. But he'd never trained past 11 seconds because he's never needed to. Yeah. And at the end of that, it's over. Now, sprinters would train for longer than 11 seconds because there's more that goes into it, but those skills just aren't transferable.
It's especially at the top level.
100% at the top level.
Yeah.
100%.
It's interesting, isn't it? It's interesting. It's fascinating to talk about these things, and I think there's so many examples of people who last a long time in their professional sporting careers often learn exactly what you're saying, that to survive that long, you're going to lose physicality, but your IQ grows.
And also, there is about your experience and your knowledge and your situational awareness, because you've been there so many times before. But it's also in any sport that the court of public opinion, whether you like it or you don't, and with the rise of social media, that everybody's welcome to comment and tell you how great you are or tell you how rubbish you are and how they could be better. But I genuinely don't think enough people realise just how good professional athletes are. So
100%.
And I say this story, and it's quite. So I come from Liverpool. My group of mates, obviously just a few knockabout lads, do different things, and I can remember it would have been just around about maybe 2004, and we'd play a bit five-a-side. I was 18 at the time. Maybe it was a bit later than that. Maybe it was 2006. And we'd have a knockabout with a footy, and no one within that group ever played soccer past playing for the school. No one was any. We had lads that didn't play with us, but they trialled at not the sixth tier of professional English soccer and didn't get in. They play with us, and we were like, these are like gods. Like,
that guy's fucking Messi.
How didn't he make it? Anyway, in the pub one time, we're having this chat. The Arsenal Invincible team, I can't recall the year, but they had Henri, Petit, Vieira, managed by Arsene Wenger, one of the best ever Premiership teams. So I think they did the whole season. Oh no, a year unbeaten. It was I can't recall. It's either a season without losing, or in the Premier League, or it was a full calendar year. Don't know if it stretched over a full season or not. But anyway, conversation goes, playing five-a-side, goes, do you reckon we'd score if we played for an hour? And some of the lads are like, yeah, I reckon we'd nick one. And I think at the time as well, like, I'd be saying like, yeah. And then the reality of it is, I reckon we'd be lucky to get a touch.
Yeah.
Like, we'd be lucky to get a touch if we played. And this is when they were in there. This wasn't like retrospectively like, oh, doing it now. This was while that Invincible team was happening. It was live. It was like, oh yeah, we just go up against Henry. Or, you know, you've got like whoever in goal, like Sol Campbell at the back. Like, we're going to get a goal. Like, no, we're not. And even like, it always boggles my mind. So when we were in England camp, we'd always have like, I'd run this example and be like, okay, you've got 50 penalties against David De Gea or Petr Cech, or name your goalkeeper. How many do you score? And some of the lads are like 45. I'm like, you're fucking joking, aren't you? Like, people in the Premier League, there's players in the Premier League that wouldn't be having a night at 45 out of 50, and you think you are, and they're like, yeah, you've not seen me though. This right boot. And they're not taking the piss. They're being 100% serious.
Yeah.
And I just think it's a funny, like, perception of, like, people, you know, you see it on TV and you think, yeah, I could do that. It's so hard just to get on the field, and this is something like I think about in terms of me, like the role I'm in now in sort of a commentary / pundit. It's like, you got to take into account, like, it's bloody hard to get out there. But
you've got that perspective because you've been there, you know.
And
I think that's healthy for a pundit to have, right?
It is. Obviously, you know, you criticise certain aspects and you think, but yeah, it's bloody hard to get out there, and the amount of work that most people have to do, like, yeah, it's
a lifetime of dedication, and even in a lifetime of dedication, some just aren't good enough. You know, and that's the harsh reality of playing at the peak of at the peak in any arena. It's just sometimes your best isn't good enough, and for some it is, and then still sometimes it's short-lived. You know, and we see examples of that all the time. I find it really fascinating because, you know, you spoke about being from Liverpool, and obviously rugby league is not the most commonly played, watched, or even spoken about as sports.
It just doesn't
over
exist.
there, which is crazy when you come from here. But you can see how big the world game is in England. I find it really interesting as to, like, for some people who play sport professionally, they make a career out of it, especially a long career like you have. It's usually one of two things. It's the deepest of deep passions and this commitment to, I'm going to do anything I can to realise and actualise that dream. Or the other end of the spectrum is, whatever I'm living in right now as a young man isn't what I want my reality to be, and I have this thing that I'm good at. I'm going to do anything I can to escape what my life will most likely look like if I don't do something to change it. For you, which one is it?
Yeah, I guess so. I found rugby league by accident almost. So in Liverpool, where I grew up, there is no rugby league, there is no rugby union. It is fundamentally all football or soccer. The question when you go to high school and you mix with new lads who you meet, it's, are you a red or are you a blue? Well, I was a blue, but I also, the caveat to that is like, well, I play rugby. I just call it rugby. And people didn't know the difference between league and union. Like, genuinely, I remember being asked by a lad in year 7 when I get there to high school, he's like, do you play the rugby where they all dive on top of each other, meaning rugby union, or do you play the rugby where you back heel it to your mate? So he could only think of it in like football, soccer context of like, oh, you do a little. His idea of the play the ball was a back heel, like little back heel to your mate behind you, or it's almost like you celebrate a goal and everyone dives on top of each other. So rugby league didn't exist, and anyway, rugby in any form was difficult for people to get their head around, because soccer is such a important part of the culture. So anyway, my dad's from a place called Maryport in Cumbria. He met my mum, moved to Liverpool. He'd always been a big rugby league fan, and long story, but he sort of nudged me to play it. I remember going to my first game. It was because it wasn't a training session, it was a game, and just instantly falling in love with this game. And I can remember feeling just amazed by how fun it was. Like, it was so much fun. It was physical. It was active. I felt like I was good at it, like from a first standpoint. And they said like, oh, well, do you want to come back to this was a Wednesday evening. I'd have been 7, nearly 8 from memory. They were like, do you want to come back on Saturday for a training session? I was like, yes. Do I have to wait? What do you mean I have to wait till Saturday? I can't do this tomorrow. So I was instantly like in love with this game, and it just took over life from there on. Like, and it didn't just take over my life, it started to take over my family's life as well. Like, I'm one of 7, and you know, we're playing like back home, half an hour's a long drive. Like, I didn't have a local team to play for, so I didn't have like a friend whose parents could share the responsibility of taking, you know, a couple of the lads to training and back, like you see here, you know. Oh yeah, like, I've got 2 young daughters now, and they're doing sports and whatnot, but sometimes it's like, oh, can you take, and but no, for my mum and dad, I was the only one around that played, so it was a big responsibility for my parents. It was always my dad that would take me, and while there was, you know, pretty much 6 other kids at home. So it was a big commitment for us all, but I just loved this game. And then as I started progressing through the ranks, it looked like I was pretty good at this. Like, I'd made a few representative teams, and I don't know if there was ever like, there was obviously a very deep ambition to quote unquote make it. Like, that would always be the chat with like my schoolmates who were like, are you going to make it? Yeah. I don't really know what that ever meant. And I always think, I almost had the goal, I want to make it. But I don't know if I ever did. Because I didn't put like boundaries on that. Like, for some people, making it is playing a first grade game. For some people, or even for myself, maybe making it was, I just want to play for Saints one day, St. Helens. Or maybe making it is, I want to play for Great Britain. Like, once. Like, did I think about, like, I don't know. I never put like a fixed boundary on making it. But then I guess, like, around about the time, like 15, 16, very impressionable. You know, some mates are doing some things. Like, where we grew up wasn't bad, but there's, you know, if you wanted trouble, it wouldn't be hard to find, and you know, that can gain status within you know, peer group, and I look, anyone that you knew me as a teenager know that, like, I was probably what they'd call a good shit rather than a bad shit. Like, you know, one of those lads, bit of a knockabout, but sort of, I had a line, and that line was drawn because of the pursuit of playing, of making it. So I guess progressing, I've sort of realised, like, this could be I don't even know if I ever had that realisation of this could be a job or a profession, or that I could make it. I was just in, and I was all in. So I guess it was just like a see what happens. I wasn't trying to get out of anything, but I was deeply passionate about the sport and I loved it. But if I hadn't have made it, I would have kept playing anyway.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't have got to say like academy level, and then if I didn't, you know, if the natural progression, if St. Helens had said to me, like, look, like you had a good crack, you know, it's you didn't, you know, you sort of, it's time to move on. I'd have just kept playing. I'd have gone down a level, and if I hadn't made it there, I'd have gone down another level, and I'd just kept going. It's
an interesting thought, and I love what you're saying here, because I recently was tipped onto an audio book by a mate of mine, and he's in the creative space, and he said to me, I think you should read and listen to this book called Big Magic. And admittedly, I'll put my hand up and say that I made it, I think, midway through the first chapter. Just the narration was a little bit plain, a little bit boring, so I kind of lost interest. But there was this really significant point early in the book that kind of, I think, sums up what the book's about. And it's, you know, this story of a lady who was a very promising figure skater who had a devastating injury that ruined her chances of skating professionally. And so as a symptom of not being able to do what she desired to do professionally and make a job and career out of, she walks away from figure skating altogether to go and, you know, live a corporate life and do a 9-to-5 job. And she finds herself at a point mid-age, you know, in her 40s, where she's decided that she's so unfulfilled and so unhappy. And someone gives her the advice, well, what have you at one point in your life loved to do that gave you a great sense of fulfillment and joy? She says figure skating. Well, why'd you stop? Well, because it wouldn't be a career. And, you know, in going back to figure skating and just doing it a couple of mornings a week, she finds a new sense of fulfillment and purpose in her life and this passion for something again. And I think it's such a weird thing that at the age of 18, almost 80% of the population, by a rough stab in the dark, would say this thing that I love cannot serve me in the form or pursuit of making money and making a career. So I'm going to completely leave it behind and be unhappier for it. Yeah. Isn't that ludicrous?
It is strange that, yeah, if it doesn't sort of compensate you financially, you'd
just completely disregard it.
But yeah, look, I think sports and team sports especially, and there's different personality types that are suited to different sports. So I imagine something like figure skating it's an individual sport, so naturally those people would be slightly more introvert than extrovert. I think rugby league generally is suited to people of extrovert. So I just, for me, there's so many benefits of our sport, and that's why I think, looking back, yeah, I wouldn't have stopped. The only way, you know, would be an injury, and I don't know the ins and outs of this story, but the only way I think I would have completely stopped playing would have been, you know, an injury that made it impossible.
Yeah, it's an interesting thought, and I guess that, you know, not to jump forward and completely disregard your whole career because it was unbelievable. Well, I shouldn't say unbelievable. It is believable. It happened. But, you know, to jump forward, I don't want to talk too much footy because I'm sure that plenty of people have heard that side of the story and got to watch it and witness it. But I find it very interesting because that's almost an incredible segue into now the life that you're living. And, you know, at some point in time when you play a sport of physical nature or any sport, it's likely that when you hit your mid-30s, you're coming towards the end of that professional life. And when you've loved something so much, whilst a lot of people, I think a lot of people don't have a great regard for the emotional impact that, you know, the end of a career would have on a professional athlete. Because it's not just, okay, it's time to hang up the boots. It's, you almost get to an end where there's no other choice. And you can go back and play some park footy, which a lot of guys do, to continue to enjoy the time of the game, where you might play some touch or tag. And I spoke to Sir John Kerwin, former All Black, last year, and you know, he was saying that he plays touch with his mates a couple of nights a week and loves it. And so there's those ways of still connecting to the game, but a huge part of your life has changed. The routine, like you said, knowing exactly where to be, what to do at this time, and what your week looks like. I can imagine it would be a significant feeling to know that that's not a part of your life anymore. What was the transition at the end of 2020 season like into this new life for you?
Yeah, well, look, I'll just pick up on a few points. Being a professional athlete, I think, is the best life. Like, it really is. Like, you get to experience things. It's phenomenal what it is, like the experiences that you have. And even when I was playing, so I probably had two schools of thought. That one, I want to play forever, and I mean forever. Like, I would just keep going until I'd keep playing until I was hospitalised, and then I'd get back up and I'd just go again because I just loved it, and I didn't want to do anything else. And if that meant, being a 49-year-old, 50-year-old, whatever, 60-year-old, I'd just be going out there, just doing it until, I was either restrained or it permanent hospitalisation, because I was just of that school of thought. Now, obviously, like, that was like early 20s, mid 20s, you hear talk of like people retiring, whatever, I'll just play forever. And then there was another school of thought of even like hearing people having difficulties transitioning out of the game, and even subjects like mental health. I was kind of a bit like, well, just get on with it. Like, you've had your time, like, you enjoy it, just get on with it. Like, just be grateful for the fact that you got to play. I genuinely used to think like that, and probably didn't, or just me even like, well, everyone has to do it. It has to end sometime. Just deal with it. Like, be grateful for what you had, and then you got to move on to someone else's time. And even at that point, I was one of those young whippersnappers that was coming to take someone's position. And of course, no one will ever come and take my position.
Yeah,
but
that won't happen.
That won't happen to me. So there was probably a little bit of that, and I guess even speaking to people, there is an element of that, of like, well, you've got to be grateful for what you had, and I guess it's a necessary consequence that when you're in that environment, you're in that institution of, playing the Warriors away on a Saturday, Monday morning, like, you're told, bring your passport. Like, the WhatsApp message will come out over the weekend, lads, bring your passports to training on Monday. What? Okay, well, because you can't be responsible enough. You can't be thinking. There can't be the element of risk that on the Thursday when we fly over to Auckland, that you might not bring your passport and then miss that flight. So some would argue that's babying, and it probably is. But I guess from a performance point of view, the coach would want to speak about variables, take away that variable of, if a star player forgets his passport, doesn't get on the flight on Thursday, then he'd have to come Friday, then that's going to affect the preparation. So they just go, well, I'll alleviate that variable. They tell the team manager, sort it out. No way can anyone take their passport. So there's, you rock up to the airport. No, you're not just rocking up. You wear your white polo. Not the red or the blue, the white one.
Yeah.
Okay. And then obviously there's other rules, like, you closed shoes, whatever, but track pants, not shorts. Track pants. And so there's, and
it's military.
very, very, not too dissimilar. Not too dissimilar. So you're very well looked after. And, from me, from being 17, 18, my day was mapped out, my week was mapped out, my month, my season, my year, my next year. I had a clear pathway of what I was doing. Probably as well, playing sport, I'll be honest, it treated a lot of my mental health issues, or it justified them. Then you come out of this system, and you sort of a little bit like a lost dog. You don't really know what's next. So I finished over there in England, came back here to Australia, and started a couple of jobs, but they were all so different. And nothing can ever replicate what you've ever done, or having that life. I don't feel as, other than perhaps maybe coaching.
Can I ask you, say it treated your mental health challenges. Do you think it treated them or disguised them for a period of time?
I think it maybe a bit of both. Yeah. So, mental health, emotional health. So I think for me, going into that team environment of, and again, there's not, I can't think of any other work environments that are like that, where it's all majority male, all between the ages of 18 and 35, plus some of the staff would be older, but that's pretty much who you're with every day. All from the similar sort of backgrounds, in terms of this sport's been a big part of your life for a number of years now. All highly motivated, all very highly motivated, all relatively speaking receptive to criticism, receptive to feedback, and a lot of, as well, like the fun side of it is like you put a lot of shit on each other. That in other work professions, it's like you're getting marched to HR. If Monday weigh-in, and it is starting to change in some sports, this is like not acceptable now. Like Monday weigh-in, your weight goes up, and it's like, just you're in.
You're in the firing line.
And people aren't just going to be like, "Oh, are you okay?" Was there some emotionally? Was there an event and you've just emotionally overate? It's like, no.
Your weight doesn't define you.
I'm just going. Gonna blow your leg. Get on the treadmill, you fat. And that sort of environment, it can be super fun to be in. It can be ruthless. Like if you're the butt of the joke, I guess people. If you're going to give it, you've got to be able to. It's give and take, right? So,
for sure.
And there's nothing better than someone that you think you're going to blow someone's legs off, and then they just come back at you and go, "Well, what about?" And you're like, "Ah."
Yeah.
But So that environment, in terms of the mental health, the emotional health, I think for me, being around the lads, that was a bit of group therapy. You talk through ideas, you talk through issues. You'd have your people who come up with certain solutions for what's going on in your life. And I guess for me, the week to week, month to month, year to year, high pressure environment suited my level of emotion. I'm a person that can be a little bit of a perfectionist, so that helped me to and a singular focus. It helped me in my personality type, where I've got this singular focus, distractions, nothing else mattered, this is what I'm going to do. That helped my mental health and emotional health. And I think that it almost justified me being who I was, very animated, very intense. And then, I guess I need to say this, that I don't want any sympathy for the person that I was, or the fortune or the privilege to be a professional athlete and get compensated financially, and more importantly, have these experiences and these memories and everything that comes with it. But coming out the other side, it was, okay, well, what now? Where's this lost dog to go? Where's my group therapy? Where's my banter? Where's someone giving me the banter back? Where's someone giving me shit for whatever? Where's my accountability? Like, I've got no one to be accountable for. Where's my feedback? So there was a couple of things. So any new role that started, so when I was playing, and it's the same for everybody, that every action, there's a multitude of ways of receiving feedback. So if I pass the ball in training, yeah, good pass, bad pass, yeah, elbow up, elbow down, you need to square up a little bit. Every tackle, good feet, bad feet, you've missed it, your timing's off. You know, then that would be filmed. So you'd have teammates telling you, coaches telling you, you'd be able to go back, watch it on video. Then in a game, every play, every set, every moment is available for you to go and look at, and you'd have your own feedback. You'd have your teammates saying, that was really good what you did, let's look to work on that. Mate, you know what, you've got to tie in there for me. Or, mate, that pass, it's behind. Mate, you've got to get, or I need it earlier, or I need it later. Yeah. Like, whatever it may be. Then, you've also got your fan feedback, you've got your media feedback. There's plenty of that. There's plenty of that, but you are just, if you want to know, you know, and you almost have to. And then you go into a different role. It's like, how was that email I sent? I don't know. Just another fucking email, mate. Yeah, just whatever. How was today? Could it be better? Like, yeah. Where can I improve? Like, sometimes I'd be writing an email, I'd be like, I'd go over it like 4 or 5 times. Like, is that word right? I was like, fucking, I'm not doing anything super serious, but so you've got that, and then I also I needed a big hip surgery, and again, don't need any sympathy, big hip surgery, but again, go from being in that professional sporting environment where the road to recovery is completely mapped out, and any changes in direction are given to me, constant monitoring of the progression of the recovery. Well, it was me on my own. Yeah. And that's like everybody else. So there'd be people maybe listening to this and go, well, I had fucking hip surgery and I didn't get that treatment, but it's what I was used to and accustomed to. You become a product of your environment. Exactly. And you become institutionalized, and because I've been so used to being treated that way, and I was okay with, again, so as an athlete, if I got injured, usually front of the queue. Like, if I needed a scan on this at post-surgery, if I was playing, I'm not making that appointment. Yeah. I'm not fucking sitting in Dr. whoever's waiting room. Yeah. Get me in. Straight through. Like, straight in. And that's a great privilege of a professional athlete. And I didn't need that anymore. But probably what I was looking for is, well, do I need to strengthen this glute? Like, how many sets? And I've got to assume that responsibility for myself, which I found it almost difficult to do. Also, when you're an athlete, you're motivated to return because you've got a light at the end of the tunnel that you want to see shine in your face. For sure. I was just like, well, fuck that. What does it matter if I am fully recovered from this hip in 6 months or I'm fully recovered from it in 9 months? Well, it doesn't really. Obviously, I wanted to speed up the recovery because I would like to be active and stuff like that, but fundamentally, there's not the same pressure or the same even self-drive to get fit. Like, I did, but it wasn't the same. And then you throw into that the COVID lockdowns, and again, a lot of people's mental and emotional health suffered during the COVID lockdowns. I had a few things thrown on top, like the recovery from the hip, still dealing with this feeling lost. So I found that I think we were locked June, July, August, where we were in lockdown, like incredibly difficult. And also as well, the very first lockdown, if you remember, like here in Australia, like as a rugby league player, so the season stopped, we were in lockdown, but we were still allowed to train with a buddy. So me and Tyson Frizzell, we trained, and yeah, it was lockdown. Yeah, we'd had like some issues like with wages and stuff like that, but it was a bit half baked. It was a bit like, man, well, almost, what's everyone fucking moaning about?
Mate, I feel that even from my perspective, because I was podcasting, so I was doing virtual podcasts a couple times a week. I was training for a marathon, so me and one of my best mates would go on a fucking 20k run together. And so it was like, this is kind of fun.
Yeah, so for the first lockdown, it was kind of like in 2020, it was like, not much has really changed. So it's almost like, what's everyone, like, again, you live, as an athlete, you live in a bubble. And this is part of that, coming out of that bubble. Well, this time, the lockdown, it was real for me. But it kind of felt like everyone else was like, here we go. Not just here we go again, but it's like, I'll use the same tools or won't make the same mistakes again. Or this is how we'll shape our environment. But I was still back in there, like, this was new to me. I'm like, oh God, like, I don't get the gym equipment dropped off from the trainer at the draft. Like, I can't get access to like, so
a whole new world.
Yeah, it was. It really was. And again, like, I don't want any sympathy for that. It was just the situation. But what I can say is, like, very fortunate to have a supportive family that recognised and almost as well a bit of change in mindset, that like I'd spent this almost lifetime never wanting to show I was hurt, always just wanting to get up, carry on, crack on. Like, that was always one of the things I sort of the person I wanted to be, was just get on with shit, like, just keep going. And there is an advantage, I think, or there can be advantages to having that sort of philosophy of just keep going. Like, you're in the shit, paddle, fucking use your hands. You got a shit sandwich, I'll take the biggest bite. Like, you just keep cracking on. And look, I was in a state where it was like, well, no, I need to surrender that. And I'm still working on that psyche of knowing when I need help and knowing when to carry on. I think it's a fine balance. But so fortunate that I got a very supportive family that were there for me. And then also Dr. Stefan Eriksson, who was the doctor and is still a doctor at the St. George Illawarra Dragons, who had no obligation to see me, but did. I think I was employed by the Dragons at the time, and but obviously he's the players' doctor, and he spent some time with me, and got me on the road to recovery, and I'm still on that road now, and there's different things that work, some things don't. Again, talking about situations, even now having time off, even being away, and the psyche of a person that likes to be busy. You go away and just relax. You're on holiday. It's like, I don't like being.
I'm jittery.
Need something to do, so I'm still working on it. So, but in terms of that transition out of sport, it hit me like a ton of bricks.
It's an interesting thought that you just alluded to, this idea of, like, I think not even just rugby league conditioning, but conditioning of 10 years ago and earlier than that was men don't feel, men just act in accordance with what must be done. And that's very masculine, right? For me, masculine energy is very action oriented. Right? I see a lot of that in my old man, like a lot of that. But then there's also this new age thing, and there's a lot of validity in it, which is you have to feel. But sometimes we go too extreme and everyone just feels and doesn't act. And so you become either a prisoner of your actions or a prisoner of your thoughts and feelings. It's like, how do you walk the line in between? And like for me, that's something that I've had to figure out. Where it's like the last couple of years, speaking to people and hearing their stories, reflecting more on my own, a few challenges in my life, a lot of great moments too. You kind of like find the balance between, I want to truly feel things and learn to be informed by those feelings as to then how I act. To either change the narrative or continue experiencing that thing that is really good for me. And it's such a hard line to walk.
It is, and it's a tough balance as well, because like I say, it's probably who I naturally was, and then you have that ingrained into you of just crack on, don't whine, don't bitch, don't moan, don't complain, crack on with it. And like I still have a bit of a hard time now that like I bitch, moan and complain about people who bitch, moan and complain. So it's kind of, I don't know what the correct term, phrase of that is, but I find myself doing that, and I'm like, I need to stop doing that, because I am doing their action, but I'm just doing it about them because they keep doing it. And then, I think it's important to talk about our problems or our issues, and a lot of men, and it does seem to be a more male issue, that they do just bottle things up inside, or they and I guess in speaking to people about tackling mental and emotional health issues, they wait too long, and then that's probably something I was guilty of as well. You're not recognizing, not listening to people and saying, I think I'm fine, I'll just crack on, I'll work through it, I've got this. There can be that mentality amongst people, and I think athletes are probably more susceptible to that. Like, I'll work, I got it. Yeah. I'll just, if the issue for me was to solve by, making 30 tackles and having 15 hit-ups a game, or over 80 minutes, they're easy. Win the yo-yo test. I'll solve my issues through doing that, but this is different. It's more complex. So
sounds like you picked your battles.
Yeah. So I guess in terms of that, like, finding that fine line, that road between, okay, I do just want to be able to crack on with things. I do want to expose myself to difficult things and overcome challenges and obstacles. Like, I still veer towards the physical ones. Like, okay, well, I'm doing a run today. Like, you've got your principles in place, and now I'll go that hard way as opposed to going the easy way. If I'm in an airport, don't use the escalators, go up the stairs. Like, yeah. But then there's the emotional and the mental side of things, which is probably a little bit more difficult to naturally navigate, I think, based off who I am, but then also the environment that I've come from as well. And it's something that I'm going to probably need work on, probably almost to the day of day.
Mate, I could speak to you about this for hours on end, but I'm very mindful of the fact that we've just ticked over the hour mark, and that means you've got to be on your merry way to your next appointment. Love this. I reckon we'll pick this up again later in the year and kind of do a part 2. But, mate, it's fascinating to hear about, I guess, your trajectory. And I'm excited for you, because I think in hindsight we can look back on what's been a huge part of our life and think that was the duck's guts, and, that was bloody brilliant. But I seem to think that there's something special that you've created here with the Buy Round, which is your podcast and the work you're doing, that I think you'll get a second wind of some stuff that's really good to come, and obviously all the good stuff in your personal life as well. So, mate, it's been a pleasure to have you on the show. I'll make sure people are linked to everywhere they can find you in the show notes. But
Yeah.
thanks for taking the time.
No, thanks for having us. I think, so speaking about the buy around, it's been great for me, having, I guess, there's myself, Charlie and Tony, we're completely independent, so it's our baby. So it's kind of good to have that thing to focus on. It's been challenging, it's exciting, it's something I genuinely enjoy, like yourself, I enjoy having conversations and listening to interesting people. So I hope I've managed to do that today. And I guess, speaking about mental and emotional health issues it's important, because, you don't need to be a genius to see that it's a massive issue amongst, Western males. There are females as well and places from non-Westernized countries that have that problems, but I think you look to tackle the big ones, and it's males from Western countries is the overwhelming majority of people that suffer and ultimately take take decisive courses of action, which it should never be that way. And I think the more we can talk about it and provide solutions is the important thing. And you're not going to be perfect all the time. You might not solve it day one, but I think anybody out there that's listening, I think it's worth it. It's worth getting the help. It's not gonna be easy, but it's worth doing, because you can provide positive things to yourself, your family, your community. So some people think, thanks for opening up, but it's like, well, no, you kind of got to do it.
Yeah, I love it, mate. Beautiful way to close up. Thank you.
No, thanks for having us. Appreciate it.
Cheers.